Yeah.
And votes online.
It's crazy.
Yes, I'm the town manager and the chair of the select board. Mike Hoyt is the chair of the select board, and John is the town manager.
You ready?
Yeah.
Are we ready up there?
Not quite, not quite.
Okay,
We're waiting
that's fine.
for.
That's fine. So it gives us the go sign.
Yeah, there should be some sort of flag.
I have to redo it.
If you got connected, go for it.
You got connected?
It connected automatically.
All right.
You should wait 1 second.
Oh,
He
no, not quite.
hasn't made me a panelist yet.
Hi.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for coming.
Didn't give it a last time yet.
Is this monitor isn't gonna work?
That one is not, this one will.
Okay.
It's the workaround.
Well, luckily, everything is in your packets and it's all online. In the Google folder for the public. Right now, all it's showing, Mike, is okay.
Yeah, I was so out of it the week that Ty was in the hospital, but I had no idea there was a meeting on the 27th.
Well, there was so many.
Who said the changes?
That isn't really critical for our meeting as long as it's broadcasting on Zoom, which it is.
No, I felt bad though.
And that's it.
Are we ready?
Feel there.
That mean we're all set?
We're ready.
Oh, thumbs up. Welcome, everyone, to Hartford School Board's board meeting for January the 10th. Are there any changes, additions? with the
So
agenda.
I'd like to make two changes, one of which is to move the district facilities committee bond recommendation to the first of the list under item 2. And the second is to let everybody know that we've been told that there's a need for the executive session at the end of the evening to discuss issues around personnel issues.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the agenda with those two changes.
I'll second.
Does everybody approve?
Aye.
Okay. So we'll go to step 2, which is the governance process, and we will ask our illustrious maintenance supervisor. Is that a name title for you?
Director of
Oh, whatever.
Buildings.
Every one of those.
Officially the Director of Buildings and Grounds.
Oh, okay.
As long as you're listening, tell me.
Well, we are listening. We are eager to hear what you have to tell us.
All right, well, thank you. Some of this is a bit of a recap to start from our previous discussions. The facility subcommittee has been meeting now for over a year. And I'm not going to go through all of the finer points of the items wrapped up into the long-term facility plan, but basically we talked about addressing aging infrastructure. We talked about the implications of changes in population and enrollment and understanding that. We talked about developing education programs, enhancing extracurricular programs, and then the ever evolving and probably growing use of district facilities for community and even regional use. With all of that being said, we addressed some specific components to really focus on life safety, obviously, the HVAC and MEP piece, and then program spaces, whether they be academic, academic, extracurricular, arts program, just enhancing our program spaces to make them what they need to be as the district grows. Each of those is, I'm not going to dive back into the spreadsheet today, but if you go through that, you can see how those are the general groups that these fall into. When we started talking about how to implement this, it's one thing to make a list and to acknowledge aging infrastructure and talk about all these things. It's another thing to actually sit down and confront the work to be done. And it really landed heavily on comprehensive planning. For a long time, like most districts, facilities management has been reactive. Something breaks, we fix it, or roof leaks, we put a bucket under it. And that's just the nature of the beast to a point. We're at a point where that's just not going to work. And we need to become proactive, and that involves this kind of comprehensive planning for both, that involves both the infrastructure, the life safety system, all that, the right, both the table design that stuff, but also getting the right input from the community, the educators, the folks involved, so that we integrate what we must do, what we just simply must do with what we'd like to do. Kind of combine the practical with the aspirational. That means we need help. We need some engineering help, we need planning help. These are resources that we're not going to have on hand despite our best intentions. I think I said last time, I can talk about the fact that there's going to be more students, but I don't know exactly who they are or where they're going to sit. And we need to sort that out before we start implementing some of these improvements we need to make. All of this kind of wraps up into a program. When we talk about this bond, the bond is a mechanism to support a program. That program is about that assessment, what we have, what we need. We've done some of that. The state's done some of that. I've done some of that. We've got a lot of information, but we really need to put an effort into it's the old school business school term of the old fit gap analysis. This is what we have. This is what we need. How do we fill the gap? And we need to bring some resources to bear to do that are outside of what we have at the table currently. Similarly, when we look at facilities, they are what they are, good, bad, and different. Some are great, some are not so great, some are just fine. But what that really means is they're just a starting point. Whether they're great or not so great, we have to acknowledge their starting point. We have to build on that. And without really understanding what we have and what the options are, we're not going to build in the right manner. So again, it's a heavy planning function here. And finally, it's how do we make sure that planning function moves into whether it be a project phase or a different type of maintenance phase in a way that has an input for program changes, community use, all these other factors that need to feed into it. Funding is obviously integral. The last time we were here, we released dollars from the fund balance to address some immediate obvious needs, and those are we're moving. We are right now, we have electrician working on assessment of some of the critical needs in the high school and middle school that were addressed by the fire marshal. That's underway. And that is kind of a good example of where we need to bring in the licensed expertise to tell us exactly what we have, so we understand exactly what we need to do, and not just be responsive, but get ahead of it. Same thing, I've been talking about the elevator at the middle school since I started here, and we're getting new bids on the elevator controls, which is long overdue. The drainage at the north end of Ottaquiche is an old and complicated problem that probably goes back to somebody was scratching their head sometime during construction about how to make the water go away. They didn't. And so that requires bringing in an engineer to look at the drainage situation, and we're not just going to dig a trench and throw some gravel in, we're going to do it right. So that fund balance expenditure is kind of it's a good kind of test pool into how we do this. The initial expense has to be planning and coordinating activities in a way that makes sense. There's two pieces where that gets applied. There's the daily operations and maintenance, the stuff we do all the day, every day. We make decisions about which filters we use, which pump we replace. The more information we have, the more comprehensive our information, the better job we're going to do with that. And then that rolls into the long-term planning piece, which is, the first is a microcosm of the second, right? The same rules should apply. It's much easier at noon today to decide how to fix that problem than it is to really analyze a situation that's going to develop over the next decade and have it come out right 10 years from now. But it's the same principles apply. To do that, we're moving forward with the life safety work. Nice an engineering firm, JS Engineering, that spent more time crawling around in spaces in high school I did not know existed, figuring out the sprinkler system and the fire alarm system, and we're working on that. We need to bring in resources for stormwater at Ottaquiche and at the high school. The same thing, heavy on the planning up front. HVAC upgrades where we need to do those. It's the same thing. I don't want to go out and just buy the same air handler we have and throw it on the roof, because that's what we bought 30 years ago. That's not the right way to do this. I can find the right air handler, but I need help figuring out what that is. And it's not just buying the air handler. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but as we looked at these tasks, it became more apparent that we absolutely must consider, if we're looking at ventilation in middle school, what's the middle school going to do? What are we going to ask at that facility in 5 or 10 or 15 years? So that we're not going back. If we ask the community to support this, I don't want anybody to go back in 5 years and say, yeah, we did it right then, but not for now. We really need to look ahead. Energy efficiency is another one that's always on the table. It's always a consideration, but I think we have an opportunity with the longer we look ahead. Those are geometric savings. You don't make your money back in energy day one. You make it back for the long haul. This is very much a long-term project. So we've got some of this work, this regulatory work we have to do. It's either regulated or it's obvious. The concrete stairways off the north side of the building is obvious. Some of the work is not as obvious. We have to do something at some point with the gym and the locker rooms at high school. What exactly we do isn't as clear. So this planning component, the idea of it is to take the obvious and the not so obvious and bring them together into a coordinated plan and activity. As I said, it's a big shift in thinking from just kind of response-based facility management to really what I do and what my department will do will be much more proactive and much, the headlights shine, turn on the high beams, so to speak. To structure the work, not just to, fix buildings, not just repair time, not just make it work, but to support the programs that are evolving in the district, to support the evolving needs of the district. So when you think about the dollars involved in bond, the reality is those line items are going to shift, and the costs from year to year for each line item are going to shift, and that's going to be a chore to keep up with. And especially now, because the market is so crazy. The prices for this and that are all over the place. The elevator control prices have gone up and down by $15,000 in the last year. And I don't know why, except the market's all over the place. So the actual list of stuff to do is going to flex and change. But the concept of having this funding in place for a long-term project, a long-term process that's informed by carefully chosen, carefully applied subject area specialists that bring on the knowledge we don't have, informed by the development of the population, the student demographics, community use, and dare say regional use. Eventually, it's inevitable. We really need to. We can't look at it just on an annual basis, and the only way to stretch that out is with some kind of block funding to really approach it, so we can dedicate the planning that incorporates these different aspects, and then we can execute in a meaningful way, so that we incorporate these different needs. We don't just put in a new sound system in the gym because the sound is terrible. We put in a sound system in the gym knowing what the gym's going to be asked to do in 10 years. And then, the last thing I always, this is my annual pitch every time I talk about this, is once we do this, we put this bond in place, we put a planning process in place, put the right people at the table to come up with a comprehensive plan long term, and we start to march into this. We've made a commitment, and we need to fund annually to maintain what we built. And I think, talking to colleagues of mine who do what I do with other districts in other areas in the state and others, the eternal complaint or observation, depending on people's mood, is that it's exciting and interesting to talk about these big projects. It's exciting and interesting to talk about long-term development. It's tough year after year after year to say it's going to cost us X again, but it does. So part of the idea behind this bond to support a really comprehensive facilities planning and improvement process is to stabilize that expense. So we know what we have and we can look ahead. And I'm not coming back, and I'm not, yelling at Jacob saying, what do you mean? It's September amount of money. We got to get to the point where these expenses become predictable. For me, it goes back personally to my interview, to the first time I talked to this group, where I think the conversation was about, my job is I'm a construction guy, I build stuff and fix stuff. But really, it's about making sure that what we have and what we do and what we build serves the programs of the district, and at the same time acting as a steward of the funds that taxpayers allow us to spend. This effort, this unfunded long-term strategic effort is kind of exactly that. It's acknowledging the changes in the program, the changes in demographics, the changes in students, and realizing that if we continue to act retroactively, that's not really good stewardship. I know when my mortgage is getting paid. I'd like to be able to say to folks, I know that in 6 years, this is what facility A is gonna look like, this is what's gonna cost a lot. But we can't do that without this kind of shot in the arm to get us going. So that's kind of, getting out of the line item conversations we've had in the subcommittee for months about why this and why that, and why is this a priority? Why this and that, and we're going back up to 60,000 feet, just saying, here's the big picture. So with that, what am I missing?
Questions?
What the exact ask is.
It's the bond, it's approving the bond, correct?
Oh, well,
To put on the ballot?
so that is, then the grand total of the bond for $20,817,875. Okay. That's what I assumed it was, but I wanted to make sure I get that. I'm in a very tenuous position on this at the moment. Everything you have said resonates with me, both personally and professionally. I'm in charge of a significant amount of infrastructure, which if it's not repaired and it goes down, the results can only be described as disastrous. At the same time, I'm also aware of whether or not there's funding makes a huge difference about what gets done. And in this context, well, I am 100% behind what the bond wants to do and behind the ideas and appreciative of all of the work that you and the members of the facility have done. We've just gotten some news in the finance committee that makes the timing of the bond become a very sensitive and important question. And I would ask that before we make any decision about going forward with the bond in whatever shape, we listen to what has to be said about the next year's budget. So I don't want to say no. I know exactly why you're doing this, and I appreciate every minute of it and so forth. But we've just gotten news from the state, and as it's been talked about multiple times before, our budget and is only partly in our control. And more to the point, the impact of our budget upon the taxpayers is only partly in our control. And there is some very significant news that Mr. Medina is going to have to share with us that affects a lot of things.
And I'm going to news today too. So
So
I am on the same page that Peter is. I have been wanting this recommendation to come through really strongly, because I still got kids, grandchildren in this school system. And I've worked with kids for so long that seeing some of the stairs in the back there that is a danger. But as Peter says, we really need to hear Jacob's presentation too, I feel, before we can make a final decision. Now, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but that's just my.
I am all for getting all the information we can. I also am incredibly leery of waiting because most people know that I do this for my personal, my job too. And a project I bid in July is $3 million more now than it was in July. And the fiscal responsibility of getting ahead of this stuff is never going to get less expensive. And I mean by millions and millions of dollars. So for me, I feel like we're not doing a good job with the taxpayers' money if we don't make a concerted effort to have a long-term plan, to know how we're gonna use our spaces, to know what the programs needs, and to know the catchment decisions. I mean, we've got 500 apartment units coming on board in the next 3 years. They're all gonna be at the smallest and oldest school in our district. So while I hear you, I also feel like this is incredibly important and will only get more expensive.
And that's what makes
Yep.
what you're
Oh, I
gonna
know.
hear gonna be the harder, because we are definitely gonna be balancing some very important things against each other. And
And I think we need to have that information for us to make
Oh, yeah,
that educated decision.
absolutely.
We've got to have all the information, which you have done a great job of providing for us.
I'm a little worried about the timing. We've had this discussion the last couple of meetings and we're sort of out of time as far as deciding about the bond. So we don't have another meeting unless we plan a special meeting, which would be fine, to support the bond. So the board really needs to grapple with this tonight. So that,
Can
you
we
know.
hear Jacob's
yeah,
presentation?
absolutely,
And then I'd like to go
Yeah.
back and have a discussion about
Right.
the bond.
absolutely. I just wanted to make sure we weren't putting it off for
2 weeks, yeah.
sometime down the road because
That was not mine.
the,
Me either.
so I just
The
want to say,
town-
let's not move the emotion one way, let's put it.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I add two quick things for
Yes, sir.
consideration? I'll leave you to. One, again, I'm not gonna dive back into that spreadsheet. I'm happy to individually or all day time. But there are things that we must do. There are things that if we don't fund them with a bond, they're gonna come from somewhere, because I can't say no.
Right.
There are regulatory absolutely required, and they're big numbers, so that's just a reality. So that's one piece. The other piece is, and this is kind of comes from, my experiences in another life. It's a big number. And I don't know how to say it except to say that in this circumstance, approving a smaller number is gonna make the number bigger in the long run. Kind of makes sense.
I understand and appreciate all of that. I don't want to avoid this. There's relevant information that we have to consider.
yeah, I just want to thank John.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yes.
And no, my hats off to you. I think you did an amazing job. I think you presented to us information we need. And the work you and the facilities committee have been doing is invaluable. It's among the most important things that we do as a board, because it's the long-term strategic thinking that allows this the district to continue to function. We just got some bad news. We do have two things to get to before we can get to the budget.
That's got the town and the first read of gender inclusive, I can't say that word. I'm sorry.
Inclusivity.
Thank you, policy.
So.
Bless you.
The district, with my minor assistance of editing around the edges, has been working for quite some time on an update of our policies around trans students and other students who have traditionally been discriminated against and persecuted because of their gender, their expression of their gender, whatever. And we have come up with a policy which has been the result of significant efforts by many, many members of the district and our community. And I would just direct you to it. You've had access to this. This is merely the first reading. We will not make a motion until we've got a second reading of it. A chance for people to raise issues about it. But I take it very seriously, and I think it's very important that we move this forward. Unfortunately, the news from last weekend, which many of you may have heard about a performance of drag queen reading a book, was canceled because some unknown individuals decided it was a perfect timing for a flophouse. That kind of threats of violence is regrettably the reason we need this policy.
I think we have a couple of guests here. I don't know, I don't want to put them on the spot, but I don't know if Julia wants to say anything about the policy. Julia Lau is our equity coordinator, but she was very involved in the creation of this policy, and we're really proud of the work. Wendy Teller, who used to work here as a speech and language pathologist, also helped us with this policy, and you, I think, have some other folks that have helped you with this policy.
Yes, definitely, and Laura as well.
Oh,
and
good. Hi, nice to
parents,
meet you.
community. And so this started in August. There were some staff members who came to me and said, hey, we know we have already a policy in place, which is amazing, but it doesn't go far enough. We need more. And I'm not an expert by any means. And so I said, all right, tell me what. So we got together with staff members and students, and we came together and just talked about what we already had, which was amazing, but what else could we do to it to make it even more powerful and stronger? And we worked on it, and we had something great, and we brought it to Peter, and Peter said, no. Peter said, this is not policy. Let's talk about what actual policy looks like. And he was instrumental in helping us refine it and make it actual policy instead of just like our passion project, right? So much is thankful for your expertise in that and making something that really can stand for what we believe in our community. In that process, we went through and edited several times, met with Peter, Wendy and I did, and then the most recent iteration was with Laura, who we just found out is also just an advocate for gender identity and sexual orientation and just knows so much. And so we're so grateful that there's so many people in the community that we can call to for this work. So we've looked at it, we've revised it, looked at it again, revised it again and again, and put in as much as we could without it being preachy or that's not policy. So this is what we have to offer you to take a look at, and we want feedback and happy to rework it if we need to, but we are very proud of it, and it goes a long way for a lot of folks and a lot of community members who are looking for this right now. So thank you for your consideration on that. Any questions from me? Questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Anybody else? No, okay.
So this is just.
You go to the.
Yeah.
Yes,
For the recording.
The audience can't hear.
Come on, Lauren, you can do it.
I just wanna know when it's gonna be read for the second time in class. I just wanna know, because I'm
Next
obviously
meeting.
have a student that I'm concerned about that worked on this.
Yeah.
That can't be here and I wanted to represent her. So next Thursday is when you would pass
The
it?
next meeting, which
Next
is.
meeting.
24th.
All right,
24th,
24.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks. We have every 2 weeks.
every 2 weeks. So, okay, that's what I wanted.
Yeah. Policy is typically 2 reads. So the first read is sort of like, what do you think? Who's got some ideas? Are there any recommendations or concerns? And then the policy committee could consider those and maybe tweak it or not, bring it back to the second read and hopefully get approval from the board.
And we're,
Kind of,
the policies are one of the most important things we do, and as a result of that, the board has to take 2 bites of that apple before we're allowed to pass it through.
yeah, policy is the law of the land
No, I just
in
wanna
the
make
school
sure.
district.
I'll
Right.
be here then too, to make sure
Yeah.
it passes.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
It's what guides my work, so it better be clear so I can execute the law or the policy.
So we'll move to the next one. Okay, this town and school charter changes. Mike?
To the table.
Whatever you wanna do, if this is easier, that's fine, you
Is there a
want
way to-
something,
To project onto this, was that screen not working?
that screen, I guess, isn't working. So, all the board has the charter changes that
But you
you
have the charter
sent me.
well.
The public can see them at hsdvt.com. They're
Okay.
all on the website in the Google folder on the school board site. And the public who's here can, there's packets back there, or you can look on your phones or.
Thanks. I'm Mike Hoyt, I'm Chair of the Hartford Select Board. I'm here with John Haverstock, our town manager. I'm going to present to you the proposed charter changes that we hope that you will approve. So this can go to the voters of the town. So we have the charter in here. We actually have the entire charter listed in here. Usually, like if this gets to Montpelier, all the stuff we're not changing, that just gets, there's an ellipsis there essentially, but I included it all, because sometimes people want to see it all. So I can go through the changes. There aren't really, in my opinion, at least anything that's too controversial. There is one item that's going to be put before the voters separately, and that's a local option tax. So the voters have the opportunity to approve our rather vanilla charter changes and, say yay or nay on the tax. So the first change of note is actually on the second page. And this is in a section that lists the specific powers of the town. And you'll see in subsection 17, we've added regulating rental housing within the town. And so this has generated some amount of chatter on social media, but I'm here to reassure everyone that this is not, we're not trying to slide anything past anyone. The charter committee came to us and they had a provision which basically would put in the charter a directive that the select board go and create an ordinance involving what's called just cause eviction. When we looked at this as the board, I think some of us had substantive concerns about the provision. But also, we didn't think it was necessarily appropriate to have language in the charter directing us to go create an ordinance. The charter's made up of different things. It lists our powers, it has the procedures. So something in there just saying, go do this, we didn't think it was appropriate. So we just kept it to regulating rental housing. And I think the way you look at it now is that it's in the list of our specific powers. So the town does have some amount of power to regulate rental housing. What I think has gotten people's attention is the idea they think we're going to go in and someday there'll be an ordinance that changes sort of the fundamental laws in the state regarding rental housing. So one thing we can't do is essentially rewrite state statute to fit our own desires. So if in the state statute, in the landlord tenant section, there's timeframes, like if you get an eviction notice, you have 15 days to respond. We couldn't change that to 45. Right. What we can do is pretty limited, right? So you'll see in other municipalities a rental registry, like that comes up sometimes. So maybe if the board wanted to, they could adopt an ordinance with a rental registry. The state gives us the specific power to regulate short-term rentals, so like Airbnbs. So that's something where we could come up with an ordinance if we wanted to. We can't, and you may have seen on Facebook or other places all these stories about, they're gonna make people pay a renter's relocation expenses or things like that. That's just not within our authority. So regulating rental housing is just basically stating a fact, like we do have to some extent the authority to do that, but that extent is limited by what the state allows us to do. We've thought about, and we have the opportunity to make some sort of clerical changes. So we thought either about saying something like regulating rental housing within the town to the extent permitted by state law, or just taking it out entirely. But the way I would look at it is sort of just a simple statement of facts.
Apologize for interrupting.
Sure.
The town charter presents a particular problem for us because it covers both the town, select board, and the school district and school board. And traditionally, there's been a division between the two and which side of the street we live on and who's responsible for what. the rental issue we're discussing very much is a town issue.
Yep.
It really isn't a school issue. So while it is wonderful to be informed about it,
Sure.
I'm mostly just concerned about the things that could potentially, if I'm reading it right, and I
Yeah.
could well be wrong, affect the school board inadvertently, or the
Sure.
relationship between the town back and forth. So I have a couple of questions on that.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I mean,
And
that's fine.
also a procedural question, which I'm going to raise, even though, but I understand it's in litigation. So the first, if I may,
Yeah.
question is on, unfortunately, the version we have is not numbered.
Yeah.
But it's the portion around the assistant town treasurer.
Okay.
The reason I'm interested in this is that the town treasurer and the school board treasurer have historically been the same person.
Okay.
We both vote to appoint somebody to that position, and we have always selected to have the same person, but it's not necessary that there be the same person necessarily, as I understand it. There are real advantages of sharing the treasurer.
Sure.
The economies of the payroll being reduced by one person, if nothing else, but also somebody who is intricately involved on both sides of that, given that you raise the taxes and then have to transfer them to us, and we then spend the school taxes and so forth, all those issues. But here it talks about the town treasurer appointing an assistant town treasurer. I'm not clear what effect that has upon the creation, the existence of an assistant school board treasurer or not. So I would, any clarification that could be given to that issue would be very much appreciated.
Right.
Because we have, in the past, through failure of communication, gotten in the interesting position of, we hadn't synced our conversations about treasurers, and that had led to misunderstanding and so forth, and it doesn't need to. The other issue is under section 401 miscellaneous, section C, rights and privileges.
Yep.
Those rights and privileges would affect the school district and the town if they are removed. And I don't understand why it is being excised. They seem to provide a useful way to transition when changes are made on how to flow the changes through. And if we take it out, we're affecting the district as well as the town. So I'd like to have an understanding of why you wanted to make that change, and whether or not we, on the school district side, want to have those changes made.
Sure, absolutely. So starting with the town treasurer, that's a really good point. I don't know if anyone brought that up during our discussions, John. The idea is that oftentimes the town treasurer goes out of town and goes on vacation. We'd like to have someone sort of in reserve who's available to, take over those functions in the event that the town treasurer is indisposed. So that's the idea behind that. Because the town treasurer, and it sounds like the school district treasurer are currently the same person, I don't think we really I don't think that issue really came up. And I don't know whether having the same person in both roles is something that, has been historically like just the pattern, or if at some point in the near past we had different people in different positions. And so I guess the question is, we do have time to edit this, is whether, if we wanted to separate the two positions, town treasurer, school district treasurer, and mention them in the charter, whether the school board would approve of having the ability to have essentially a backup person to do this. And that's something I think is a pretty easy fix, if that would be the will of the school board.
I just want to clarify question. Is the elected position is town treasurer? The school board takes that person on as.
This is not actually an elected position. This is a position appointed by the select board and the school district to serve that function.
Right, the treasurer is an elected position, isn't it?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the town.
So that the
Okay,
town,
we've already
okay,
had
that's
them.
the question is,
Yeah.
the school board has the choice to adopt the
Okay,
town,
that's
the
how
elected
it-
official. That's what I was trying to
Okay, so
clarify.
we
So,
haven't,
In
we've
the-
traditionally done the same person.
And in the absence of the school district having their own treasurer, the town treasurer is the school district's
Right, so we have
treasurer by
that.
statute.
But we have the right to have our own
Yes,
separately.
yes,
We have
We,
failed to,
we haven't,
that's where I'm getting, I've
Hmm.
run into this tangentially.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I off on some of the details, but the point is, we have always come to agreement, had the same person serve in both roles, even though that theoretically we have the right to have separate roles.
Right.
And so,
since
If
we,
that-
yeah, since you haven't exercised that
Yeah.
right, the town treasurer is.
Is the
school
default.
treasurer.
yeah.
Okay.
But I
And-
mean,
and-
if you felt like it was important to address the fact that you may in the future have a separate treasurer, I think there could be language.
Or some language perhaps that you would consult with us upon about the appointment of a
Assistant.
assistant. Because I think we have been well served by having a single individual in both
Sure,
spots.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just, we have a legal responsibility to have some part of a conversation about
Yeah.
what happens.
yeah. we
In
can
the
think
years
about
I've been here,
What
yeah.
kind of language might be helpful, like if the town treasurer and the treasurer of the school district are not the same person, then, we sort of give you the rights.
Yeah.
to do an
I would
assistant.
strongly advise in the 13 years I've been here that the town treasurer be the school district treasurer.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. The way that the funding flows to the school district is through the town. So having that person act as the town treasurer and the school treasurer really smooths out that process. So there isn't some sort of disagreement or misunderstanding between a school treasurer and a town treasurer. It's one person. So they see that flow from the agency of education to the town and make sure that the funding comes through correctly. So that's been problematic in the past. The town treasurer has really helped us sort that out, starting with. But the assistant town treasurer, I think the concern really is about the town treasurer just unilaterally, or the town select board unilaterally appointing an assistant town treasurer
And then-
that the school board has
to
no
adopt.
say.
Well, that was my question.
Yeah,
It's like, is the
so
language
that's-
just, we would like to be part of the
I think
conversation?
that is,
Okay,
I think that would
Yeah.
resolve any concerns I had. I'm just basically raising the question,
Yeah,
saying.
no,
have you
I'm-
thought about
No,
it?
it's a totally
It's
legitimate
valid.
that
yeah,
we
because
should
right now
have
it's
some.
basically like the town treasurer appoints an assistant by
Yeah.
informing the town manager, and if we wanted it to be like informing the town manager, select board and school board.
Or even the town manager
And the superintendent.
Yeah, right.
That would
Right.
be.
Town manager and superintendent, I think that would be a pretty good.
That would be an easy
Yeah, that
change,
would
and
be.
probably appropriate.
Yep, great.
And then I would bring that to the school board, or my
Yeah.
count, my, replacement will bring that to the school board, and the town manager brings it to the.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we got it down, so that's one.
Yeah.
The rights and privileges section, so my guess on this one, when the charter committee was looking at this, is that they considered this a cleanup, right? So if you look at it, it was really put in when the charter was initially adopted, right? And so if it was like, the charter said, we're getting rid of a position entirely, or if we're reducing the number of people on the board, then those people are allowed to continue their term before this takes effect, right? So I think that's what that was. Looking at this though, and it does bring to mind one section involving the joint town school meeting committee. So there's a change in here basically where the select board appoints 2 members, school board appoints 2 members, and the town clerk appoints a member. We decided, or the committee recommended, that we get rid of the ability of the town clerk to appoint a member, because the town clerk is now an appointed position, right? So we're elected, right? So we get 2, select board's elected, we get 2. When the town clerk was elected, yeah, they get 1, but now it seems like if they're appointed, they may be sort of influenced unduly by the town manager or one of the boards.
Right.
So that's a change there. But if I think about it now, there is probably a 5th person on that committee who's been appointed by the town clerk.
Mhm.
And we may want to keep this language just to make sure that they at least finish their term before we move to the 4-person
town school
Yeah,
meeting.
and
committee.
the issue is that if we were to go and make other amendments to chapter 123A Town of Hartford, which is governed by that language, adopt it, and it ends up removing a position, adding a position. This language sort of addresses how to do that transitionary period.
Right,
And so I would think that it's not quite as hollow as it would have appeared, because we obviously regularly amend this document,
Yeah.
and it could consequently have an impact on the duties of a position, whether the position exists or not, and so forth. So I have a question about taking that out.
yeah, no, I think I agree with you, I mean, it's one of those, sometimes when people go through statutory language, there's an urge to clean up everything they think isn't relevant, but this does no harm staying in.
Right.
And I imagine it would protect, any sudden changes or confusion, in the event, we add another position or we take one away, so. It's one of those, sometimes you get zealous when you're like going through there, and I think that's a very good point and one that, I think is well taken. That we'd probably be happy to adopt.
Okay, and the last issue is a little bit difficult, sensitive, but a former member of the school board has sent the school board notice of a lawsuit that she has filed questioning the adequacy of notice about the meetings, the adequacy of the posting of revisions of the document as it was being reviewed and edited.
Yep.
And so forth. I'm not clear as to what impact her lawsuit has upon our ability to proceed or not. I just don't have any information on
Is that
that.
an open meeting law? That sounds like an open meeting law.
Yeah, it's a open meeting law related kind of question.
We did address that with this person, if it's the same person with the same concern. And I think we were able to demonstrate to her, I haven't heard anything to the contrary, that in fact, all the meetings that she claims not to have been able to find on the website had in fact been properly noticed, but that there was a brief period with a transition of the website, that they were for a temporary period, not available for public view, but that they, again, had been published and noted appropriately. And she never responded to me when I
Okay,
pointed
so
this out.
the only reason I'm bringing it up that she sent out a note to members of the board yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
So it appears that she is intending to proceed with that claim.
Sure, and
It's
that
not
is one
necessarily-
where, we followed, or John followed the statutory requirements of responding. And I don't know if you've talked to our town attorney, but, an open meeting law complaint, like, is it gonna void like the charter if we pass it, unclear, probably not.
Yeah, I have not consulted legal counsel. It was more of a factual issue. Did the Charter Revision Commission properly notice meetings and post minutes? They in fact did, and we provided evidence of that fact to the person making the open meeting law complaint. And that was probably at least 2 weeks ago, and I hadn't heard anything since.
Sarah?
I just want to ask about the one for me was the warning of like that it was supposed to be on last year's ballot, and I just wanted some clarification about like what that timeline is, I guess, because that's the one I believe, I understand what you're saying about the open meeting. That one to me stands apart as a separate issue.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I understand that issue is that the Charter Revision Commission, having been appointed by the select board and the school board, developed its recommendations for the charter and how it could be improved. And that was done before the select board, at least in December of 2022. And it hasn't been until December of 2023 that the select board actually took that up and started debating it and disregarding some of the recommendations, approving and incorporating some of the recommendations. And and now is in a position to present their proposal to the voters after a couple of public hearings scheduled for later this month in February for the voters to consider. So I think, and Mike can speak better than I can about why there was a year delay.
Yep.
But I imagine it had something to do with the absence of a town manager to help with the process.
That is correct. It came to us fairly late, we were in a transitional leadership period, and I think caution sort of told us like, let's wait till we get a town manager in here permanently before we, put stuff to the voters, that at least the tax is kind of a big one, and so that's why we did that, and then this time we were able to have, we took it up over a course of meetings. We had a lot of comment on it and good discussion. We've got info night next Thursday where we'll be doing this again, John. And then meetings January 23rd and February 6th as part of our regularly scheduled board meetings. So if anyone wants to come in and comment, they're welcome to do so then. I think as we've indicated in our discussion, we think this is a collaborative process. We're listening to people. We still have an opportunity to make amendments, sort of including the ones we've discussed tonight before we finalize everything. So, that's why we're here now. We didn't want to get too far ahead of people. I wanted to know one more thing that I noticed that affects the school board, and that's when we talk about the town moderator and the school district moderator.
3-year.
We've changed in both instances a 1-year term to a 3-year term. The 3-year term seems to align with some of the other terms that are or some of the other positions. And then Chuck doesn't have to go each year and get his signatures, and so that is a substantive change, is that it would be a 3-year term.
That one seemed relatively straightforward to me in terms of what's being proposed, and having no great feelings either way on that issue. I didn't raise the question about that, but I had run into the occasional miscommunication and misunderstanding around the treasurer position. And I want to head that off just so we don't do that in the future.
Right.
And by the way, thank you, Sarah, for correcting me.
Sorry.
And the other one, I think it does actually serve a purpose to allow us to figure out how to do the transition from we've made a change to now we're post the change. So I think it's good language to leave that.
And one thing I would just say, come here tonight and meet with everyone. I think both boards would probably really like it if we did have sort of regular communications, if just a check-in between the chairs or between John and Tom, just to make sure we're all on the same page. We're certainly interested in the work that you do here, and I assume it sort of goes the other way as well. So hopefully that's something we can sort of get scheduled, like a regular sort of standing meeting.
We have had regular on and off. So irregularly regular.
Right.
Exactly. The select board over the years, and it had always seemed to be fruitful.
Yeah,
And
very
well
much.
worth the time. My favorite, not surprisingly, are the ones where we had the meeting and then had a meal together.
Yes.
I think that adds to a collegial feeling that otherwise would be absent.
Yeah.
And I very much, and I expect the other members of the board would join me in that and say, we would welcome the return to those kinds of meetings.
Absolutely.
Superintendent Bossy has made it very clear to me that there's no problem that can't be resolved over a bowl of pasta.
Absolutely.
So.
It's true, sorry.
Any other questions while I'm up here? Proposed changes?
Is there action needed, or what are you looking
John,
for?
yeah, what are we procedurally looking to do?
Yeah, let me just say that the calendar is tight, and we actually warned the public hearings by a January 5th deadline. We would have liked the opportunity to have run this by the school board before we took that step of warning the meetings. But we were told by legal counsel that there's no harm to do the warning. but that it would be great for us at whatever time to consult with the school board and hopefully get at least a sense of approval of proceeding with the process to put these matters before the voters after public hearings. So if there was some sort of motion to that effect, we'd appreciate it.
Wait just a second,
Let
let him sit down. So, I would move that the board, having had a chance to discuss those issues in the charter that affect the school board as well as the town, is satisfied by the response that we got around proposed changes and is supportive of bringing it forward with those changes included.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any discussion? Further? Okay,
Thank you.
that work?
Thank
That
So
works, thanks very much.
we want to encourage you that we were happily able to move the warrant
Yes.
information night from its original January 8th date to Thursday, January 18th. If between now and then you all come to decisions about a bond or what have you, please let us know. We'd like to have that form available to you if you want to use it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Definitely, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Our coach and I both have a conflict that night too.
All right.
For civil authority.
And now, having set the stage,
Here's the drum roll.
We don't have to sit as a normal board.
Thank you.
thank you all.
Thank you all very much for your work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please hold your tomatoes for the end of my report here.
I made sure they didn't have any.
He just gave us nasty water, right? That's what it is?
They might throw a water bottle, I don't know.
I thought you were just being friendly.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we got some bad news, as did a good majority of people on December Eve, which is that we got our CLA number, which is the common level of appraisal, whopping 66.31%. Now, if you don't know, or if you refresh it, the CLA is inversely related with tax rates. So the higher the CLA, the lower the tax rates, higher tax rates, lower the CLA. So presently, if you look at the Vermont State Education tax page in your packets, this gives you the picture about where we are currently with this new CLA information. And the other piece of information that we got semi-finalized, it's been a little bit of a struggle with trying to get the numbers from the state, is that our long-term weighted average 2017-40 is all but frozen. So there really isn't a whole lot of pieces that are really flexible other than whether or not the state applies some more money to some of the yields that came out in the December letter, which are projected in here for the income and the homestead. But as it stands now, we're looking at a 38.9% increase on homestead taxes and a 25.7% increase on the income base. I don't want to speak for taxpayers, but that's a little bit high for me.
Now, we are not uniquely in this situation. Many of the towns in Vermont have gotten CLAs back that are in that same range. I've spoken to a member of another school board about this. They're getting hit with the same exact problem. They think they'll manage to avoid it because they're actually in the process of redoing the grand list right now. They hope to squeak it in time to get that adjustment so that they won't have the CLA induced increase in the tax rate. But I don't think that option is at all available to us. And trying to go to the public with a 38.9% increase in the property tax and a 25.7% increase in the individual income-based version of it. And a bond at the same time presents a political problem. Why I'm saying we're gonna need to do some serious considering on how we're going to deal with this. And in part, I think part of the answer is that we're gonna have to go back and look at our assumptions about the budget that we've been modeling.
You'll see, there's a page in here that's basically the summary of changes for FY 25. And obviously, you know, some of these things will have to be reconsidered by you as you know, you actually really want this in our budget for next year and dollars worth it.
So traditionally, the way we have done this in the past is this board has not attempted to cut and pick and choose between the different areas of expenditure. We have instead directed the superintendent and the staff to go and reach a target number or percentage increase in taxes or whatever, and trusted on their ability to best determine where we could sacrifice.
I've usually sought a goal
Yeah.
or a percentage that the school board will support, I guess. Obviously not 35%, but
The state, as many of you know, had made an announcement earlier that the average tax increase for the state as a whole was going to be in the 18 something range. And I had hoped that we would be able to do better than that with some careful thought, but any attempts to have used what we were going to do with the CLA numbers just blows out of the water. I cannot personally remember a CLA that was lower than the high 80s.
No, it's pretty unheard of.
And so to drop 20 points approximately is just unheard of.
Any CLA below 85% automatically, or if you're, you know, over 115%, automatically triggers a reappraisal by the town. I know Hartford at one point was working on it, and it's been a huge problem with the state where historically there's been 2 or 3 firms that have kind of done the reappraisals, and I know they tried to free it up a little bit more to be it down on the local level, but this one is hurting all of Vermont. And where I get really concerned is I have to set my tuition by Friday. It's a statutory deadline. So I kind of need to make some quick moves, but we're setting our tuition. If you're gonna jack up the tuition significantly, you need to think about other districts are gonna have to pay that and are facing similar issues as we are.
So we have a difficult position to be in. I would like to suggest that we basically abandon the budget that we had developed and ask the superintendent and his staff to come back with an alternative budget that comes back with a different rate. I also think that we need to look at the extent we can buying down. We don't have enormous, we had a very nice surplus, but we also had significant needs for it, and we've already made use of part of that. There is some left. We do not want to go with no money in the bank because, as has been discussed multiple times, having money in the bank saves us money, significant money in terms of needing to do short-term loans to make payroll and things like that. And with interest rates being higher than they have been in quite some time, the amount that it saves is even more significant. But we have unfortunately no good choices at the moment that I'm aware of. And we need to optimize things as much as we can. Which is why I had hoped that we could figure out some way to do the planning portion of what was proposed and put off doing the bond until we had gotten the planning portion of that exercise done, just as a way not to have the bond hit the same month or the same year as this atomic bomb dropped on us. And I don't know if it's possible to do that or not, but we're gonna need to make some really hard choices.
If we do delay the bond, we have to come up with money that we don't have to do the next year's worth of regulatory work in our buildings.
So,
I just want to,
no,
that if there's a reality
yeah,
around that,
that's the exact context. We need to be clear on why we're doing what we're doing and how to do it with the least impact. And the advantage of a bond is we spread that cost over multiple years, and it does not hit as hard in the year that we're doing it. And that's a very cogent extra, argument to make. But we do need to very quickly get a handle on where we're going to look at addressing this, and whether it's, we do some variant of the bond that will minimize our expenditures this year, that will meet the regulatory requirements and safety requirements that we have to address. I don't know how we mix that with everything else, but the thing I'm afraid of is we had planned to invest very heavily in people to help with our students' mental health issues. Those are not going to go away, but we don't necessarily have the money. And we need to be given some alternatives so we can choose among the various bad choices for us to present to the town.
Well, we certainly will, work on that. That's the board's, desire, wish, and I think it's prudent. I do think that if we forego the bond, there's going to be actually more pressure to increase the budget to get that regulatory.
But I wanted to have that conversation about this.
Whatever reductions we make in the budget will probably be offset by not doing the bond. That makes sense. So
the bond may be the cheapest way to go forward.
well, and then the question becomes, do we?
But then we have to explain it that way. We have to sell it that way. And we have to be prepared to speak up on the 18th. But this is the budget we're going forward with. And by the way, we're asking for a bond in the face of very large increases, because otherwise the increases would be even larger.
Right.
But I didn't want to have the conversation separately because they do interact.
Oh, yeah. No, this is brilliant. I'm glad you.
yeah, they definitely interact.
Yeah, and none of this is fun.
I'm gonna put Jonathan on the spot and he doesn't have to come up with an exact answer, but is there a million number that is that first year expenditure without the studies, like without the $500,000 in catchment and long-term planning, just that spend for the first year?
I'm reluctant to give you that number. I could come up with that number.
I mean, in my head, it's at least $7 million. It's like almost half of this money. Yeah, okay. It's not an insignificant amount.
So, when I didn't go into I don't want to get too.
No, we're not.
When I didn't go into the line items, one of the things that is part of the program is the low hanging fruit, so to speak, even though it's a ton of work, is this regulatory and safety related stuff
That we don't have a choice about.
we don't have a choice about. And one of the things that I think is at least a defensible position is that we enter into that regulatory work with this planning component in mind, so that we don't build systems that don't serve our needs in 5 years. So that and we're then coming back and saying,
As I said, That's an argument I totally, completely understand, because that's where I am, and that's where Sarah is constantly.
Yeah.
That's what we
It
do.
feels a
Yeah.
little bit like, refinancing your home.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the cash.
Yeah.
You don't have the cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we need
It's-
to
Hmm.
be given some options to choose among. And part of the issue is we used to have the tax impact sheet set up so we could do it sort of dynamically, and so if we reduce the overall budget by $1 million, what does that do to the tax rate increase? And so forth. I don't have a sense of what that relationship is. If nothing else, could we please have quickly if we took it down, taking $1 million, another million, another million, another million, so we have some idea of how that would impact the tax rates.
I can get you that tomorrow.
Okay, so that gives us something to start thinking about where we want to do it.
It's extremely unfortunate this year that the decrease in the CLA aligned with the elimination of the ESSER funds from the federal government.
And the healthcare bump, I
And the
mean, that
healthcare
16% is
bond
just
that was
insane.
presented.
Yes. So
So
large,
just those three factors are
Yes.
what
large percentages of what's causing this increase are not anything we have any control over. The state took over negotiating the healthcare. That's not us anymore. Here's the number, pay the bill, please. A lot of this is not things that we control, it's just the environment we live in. But we need to be able to respond to this quickly. So if we can get that, maybe we have a very quick meeting to, based on those numbers, sort of work out how deep we need to cut into the proposed budget. In the meantime, you can start doing a series of, we take this, we lost $1 million, we do this, we lose $2 million kinds of things. So we know what the other side of the equation is, that this is how hard it's gonna hurt.
So I want to play the devil's advocate a little bit. How feasible is it, do you think, that we can sell the budget that we've got in front of us and the bond?
So,
I have to think that way for a few
Yeah.
minutes.
so
Can we go ahead and do both?
I mean,
Can we sell it to the
as Yogi
taxpayer?
Berra basically famously said, predictions are hard, particularly about the future.
That's very true.
I haven't heard that.
I have a really hard time telling what is going to happen politically. I think in part it depends largely on how good a job we do with selling us. Personally, excuse me, based on nothing other than a gut feeling, I think if we can make the argument that the bond is actually reducing the taxes and the increase in the taxes, we can probably sell the bond into addition to whatever budget we come up with. But I don't think we can sell this budget.
Can you,
Can
oh,
Yes, sir.
sorry.
Obviously, I've been on the facilities since it started. We put a lot of hard work in it.
Mhm.
The numbers that you're looking at are factual,
Yes.
actual.
Mhm.
We've got to this point based on previous budget years.
Mhm.
We keep putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. Well, it's gonna come in, well, it's already here. It's biting us
Yes.
badly.
Mhm.
And to put it off longer is pure stupidity. And so I'm all for going to the public and explaining why we're here
Mhm.
and what we need to do to fix it.
If that is the
I
will of the
can-
board,
And
I'm
I
all
have
for it
no
too.
problem defending the budget.
So
People need to understand, you want your children educated, this is what it costs. It's not funny money. Part of it, or a good share of it, is out of our control. This is literally driven by decisions in Montpelier.
And
And if for some reason, first of all, we're gonna put a lot of time into presenting this to our colleagues so that they understand when it comes to voting, what's reality. And that's gonna be hard work, not gonna be nice, because you can sit right here and have 50 people and we'll get his tomatoes. So this is a year of, and I've said it to Tom over and over and over. This is gonna be a year where we're gonna get bit in the butt. And it's slash and burn, you know, this reminds me of my good days at Hitchcock. It was slash and burn, slash and burn. And if it means we have to look at the operating budget, and sadly, if it comes to either programs or staffing position have to go, I'm sorry. I put the bond above everything else, because if we don't, we're just paying more and more and more and more. And we're gonna dig the hole deeper where the people who rule over us, like the fire marshal, etc., it's only going to get worse. It's
So-
not gonna get better, and people need to understand, he can shut the door.
Right, well, the bond ends up being paid for out of the operating budget. The question is, and I don't know if it's in what you've done or not, let's see if it changes.
I think the bond would be part of FY 26 budget. The first payment is generally due the
Okay.
year after we take
Okay,
it
that
out.
helps.
So that helps.
Uh,
That's been my experience in the past, depending on which cycle we're in, but I
Right.
believe if we play it right.
But you can tell us, you know, we used to have a regular table and this bond is going out.
We do, we
and-
still do.
And I'm sure that you can look at
Yeah.
that and say, what would that have a net impact on the operating budget in the out years?
Yeah.
Because we're about at the end of some of these
We can
things.
give you all that. We
So
have the
we-
tables in last year's annual report. It'll be in this year's
Right,
annual report. We can run the numbers on a bond.
so that will help with this decision. As I said, I think it's going to be easier probably to sell the bond part of the package
The budget.
than the budget part of the package. But in a world in which the number one political issue for most people is inflation, and the fact that it is quite easy to go to the store and walk away with 3 items and spend $50 without being extravagant and buying all sorts of fancy foods. The fact that we're looking at just shy of $700 increase in your property tax per $1,000 of value of your home, it's gonna hurt a lot of people very hard. So we need to keep that in mind. And so we do not have Coach Christie with us, and I think he's a very important player in this decision. He has much better political instincts than I do. But they're basically done. But I think that we need to get an understanding of how the final number for the budget impacts the tax rate with the, you know, maybe a table and just with, you know, take $250,000 off each line. Just gives us how the curve works. And that you start looking at how you would meet those different kinds of cuts. And then we have another meeting as quickly as we can to get a.
Tom, could you look at the budget and take the increase? Is it 4 million something? And go back to the budget and slice it down by that 4.5 million. What it would do to the program in general. No,
For-
it's
Yeah.
a hard one, but.
Oh, you mean to level fund from
Yeah,
last year?
yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and see what that does to the tax rate.
That it also is, that's more or less what I asked for, I just wanted the more data points.
Yeah,
Or in $500,000 increments?
500,000 or $250,000, whatever
Right.
it is, so we have some idea of how that plays out.
Yeah. That's how
And-
we've done it
It's-
in years
Yeah,
past. The
'cause
board's
we're gonna
given me a
be
goal
looking at
and
some very painful choices quite quickly. And it's gonna go from, we don't get the new people we wanted.
We have to let go.
We're getting letting people go,
And people will leave.
Yeah.
Without us even letting them go.
Yeah.
Come on,
So-
we have to face that too.
so.
yeah,
we-
we're in a
we need-
really strange, Nancy
Yeah.
knows, we're in a very strange place in schools with, you
Yeah.
know.
People have choices.
Not a lot of,
But all
Can-
the
can
other
we-
schools in the state are facing the same thing,
we are.
mostly.
Well, yes, so if the average tax increase projected for the state was 18+%, it means an awful lot of people are very bad, and some of them are where we are,
Right.
out of the end of the curve there. But without having an understanding of how actual dollars impact tax rate, and having an understanding of what we're hurt by cutting those numbers, we can't have the conversation in a meaningful way, I don't think. So I'm just suggesting we ask that those be provided, and then we get back together for some very hard conversations very quickly.
Yeah, next week.
Yeah, do we need to get back together next week?
And
Or,
Monday is a holiday.
Well, what's the timeline
and-
for the
and-
bond?
well, you said you.
Thursday is
the
the
tuition.
bond hearing.
Yeah, so,
We've got to have it before that.
so if you got it,
I think I'm gonna end up setting the tuitions regardless of where we end up on the budget, because
yeah.
it's all kind of a guess. I
Mhm.
mean, keep in mind, the budget itself, when we're presenting it to taxpayers, is a guess. It's a well-educated guess because we don't know where we're gonna end up until they finalize the yields.
Yeah,
Because the
which
very
is,
thing that they could do is they could take all this and go, oh, people are doing this, we're gonna bump it up or
The
down.
other thing, and the reason I want to have this conversation with coaches here is, as somebody just pointed out, we're not the only town that's suffering this. The question is, what is the response from everybody through their legislators to the state about this state?
well, that's my concern from the get-go. Not that I think they can work miracles. This year's probably in all the years I've been doing this, the most drastic increase or decrease in the CLA I've ever seen. Yeah, we've had years where we've cut. We've had years where we've actually made cuts. And in the end, like Jake said, there is no increase in our budget or tax rate. So look at that chart. That's in the annual report too.
I don't
Like,
know if the legislature is in a position to attempt to do anything about this or not.
I mean, Governor Scott has spoken a lot about it, so
Well,
it's on
yes,
high
yes.
on his list of I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I'm just,
Right.
I'm throwing it out there that the conversation is not mild around this topic.
No, because the 18% on the health insurance alone, that conversation started 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I certainly can do my best to bring that $4 million down
Right.
to a place where I think we can keep our head above water, if that's possible.
Mhm.
The problem is gonna be, you know, people have come to expect the ESSER funded positions.
Mhm.
And they've done a lot of good, so it's gonna be very tough. It's gonna be painful for all
But
of
if
us.
we don't have the numbers and we don't know what we're cutting, we
Right.
can't make
I
bad
will,
choices.
I can't do $500,000 increments because that would just be,
Well,
you know, sort of ridiculous as far as creating 10 different budgets.
Right.
You know, or 8 different budgets, but I could do a couple scenarios
So
that,
do a couple
and
scenarios.
that you can then choose and
Give us
say,
the
we
data
can, we
points,
can support this
And
one.
then if we choose a data point that's not one that you've done scenario for, you can adjust to that
Mhm.
point. But we get some idea of how we're hurting ourselves and our town.
Can we not have a vote on the bond? Submitted on whatever the magic date is, we're supposed to do it?
Yeah, because because the 18th is,
And
we're
go through
supposed
that-
to do an
And go through that
information.
process,
Right,
and still
exactly.
3 weeks later, when we have other information, drop it.
Right,
I mean,
The
are we
bond
allowed to
night
do that?
that's in the town charter that John and Mike spoke about. That is an optional meeting that the school board and the select board may do to give information on a proposal. So even if we went next Thursday and presented that, there's no commitment that you're gonna do that. That's really your stepping your toe in the water to say, huh, does the town support this or not? So that's what that meeting's for. It's an informational night, for the town and the
It
school.
might be a really good
propose.
temperature test.
Yeah,
So,
once we get to February, then those
By the way,
become
are there any-
statutory.
Jonathan, and then do we have any kind of comments? We're not to the comment section yet, but.
No.
I had
But
to
I'd love to.
take off short. Can I just interject one thing, not to push the
Yes.
conversation, just information. When I first got here, I started educating myself, paying attention to some of the regulatory stuff coming down. And that's how we got through asbestos. And that's how, we've been marching through this stuff. There are a couple things queued up that are mandated by the state that are gonna hit school districts. And I can't quantify the impact, which is why they're not included in the bond, which is why they're not included, but PCBs is the elephant in the room.
Right.
One of the reasons that I I'm comfortable with the idea of having a bond in place. And one of the reasons I talked about the flexibility of line items is because if we're going to have a period of restricted annual operational funding, and we have a state mandated requirement that we must respond to, that's the only place we have to absorb that blow. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it's
I'm not saying that's not the pro or con argument, it's just you either brace for the blow or you don't.
right.
And I don't know, we're not done, we're not through that process yet with radon, PCB, and what else is coming next. The state's not gonna let us out of that, and we don't know until we've gone through the process what the implications will be. So there's a certain, it's easy for me to say there, I don't pay taxes in this town, right? But in terms of just being a steward, there's a certain comfort level of saying, okay, by the longer we look out, the more flexibility we have in
Right.
choosing how we absorb those impacts.
And I have not said the bond's a bad idea. I've said the bond needs to be considered in the context of everything else that we're facing. I think we, quite frankly, should have another meeting as soon as we can. I don't know what that means.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
We appreciate.
Is there anybody, by the way?
No,
No, okay.
there's people, but there's no one,
Nobody's
Raising
raising their hands. Okay, good.
And coaches not on you.
The coaches is on.
no.
Okay, so, yeah,
I guess, first of all, Tom, how fast can you and
what is a reasonable request for you to give us some of the information about the hit we just took?
Tuesday?
When?
Next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday.
Wednesday, I have a conflict, but obviously.
Wednesday and Thursday are too late, right?
And I'll be crunching.
Well,
the
Thursday
numbers
is
for
the
you over
Is the
weekend.
warrant
I'll
night,
get
yeah.
those to you as soon as I can, so. obviously
16.
Your discussions can start taking place, but I'll get it to you as soon as I can.
I mean, Tuesday would be the best because we could warn it properly.
So we're gonna do it Tuesday? Is that what you're telling me?
I would suggest that we set a meeting as soon as we can get one.
Monday's a holiday, so that's,
No, it's not like you're gonna be one out of town.
yeah.
Just like to
I'm
ask,
sorry, it's-
bond, are we looking at a 20-year bond? Or does the board have any preference? I just want to get the bond bank involved, and we'll start to get some kind of preliminary numbers that I can bring to you that we might want to show to the public. As far as like interest.
I think it's 20 or 30.
Yeah, and the answer is whatever the bond bank says is the right decision financially to make.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, anybody else? I mean, they're the experts.
I don't think we have anything currently.
I
being
would
done.
prefer to do it shorter just because we're tying up future expenditures for that long period.
So we're gonna look at Tuesday? Is that what we're gonna do?
Yeah, I'd like to make sure
Gives you another
coach
day
is
there to-
available.
What time?
So that means we can make it.
So what piece is
I'm open.
that?
And check just to make sure, I think I am, but. Get over to Tuesday.
Tuesday's the 16th.
Yep,
I would
I
give
can
it,
do that if we have to.
would you wanna do, 5:30, 6, and we
6
can
o'clock.
use my office instead, because this will probably be booked,
Oh, yeah, because
select board.
6 is fine with me.
Tuesday, 16th, at what time?
6 o'clock.
6.
6 o'clock? Okay.
Where we're gonna be here or your?
That's
Well,
His
the
office.
soup's office. The town's office.
and it'll just be 2 items, budget and bond.
And
If you look at last year's, there's a couple copies here if anyone wants them, but you can take it tonight. Page 60 is the bond schedule for the school district.
does anything go off or anything new,
No.
or we're adding new?
We don't have anything going off because our oldest bond is 2013, which is the second year I was here.
Yeah, so that
We
is,
still got 10 years on
well,
that.
there were some bonds that predated us,
Yeah, those are all done.
those are all done, so.
We had 2013, we had a 2014 bond, which was the middle school gym and cafeteria. 2015 bond was White River renovation. 2018 bond was the parking lot. 2019 was the Wilder School.
So,
Right now, we have $14,460,000 in bonds.
you're gonna need to give us some rough numbers of what the bond is gonna cost when we start paying it off, so we can take that into account.
If we're talking about a 20-year, we're probably talking about at least $1 million on principal and a couple $100,000 on interest.
Another great sheet to look at is page 21, which is the history of our school budget. The estimate of what we thought the tax increase would be, and
What
then
it turned
the
out to be.
reality
Yeah,
of what it is.
but,
And it's fascinating.
yeah, so
just,
unless it turns out the Department of Education actually made a significant impact mistake on CLE, common level appraisal everywhere, CLA, not CLE. Gee, legal education is not relevant. But CLA, we've got a big problem to deal with, and we are not the only ones sitting in the soup.
I mean, I've been in contact with Coach about a lot of this stuff as it's come up, because it's been such a hot button issue with my fellow business managers, and Coach iterated the same thing that he's hearing from his constituents, is that their business managers come to them saying, ooh, the CLA really hit us hard. And a lot of people's budgets are going through some very challenging times this year.
So I would like to move that we have a emergency meeting of the school board next Tuesday, the 16th at 6 o'clock to continue the discussion on both the bond and the budget. At which time we will, in the superintendent's office, at which time we presented information on how the budget number affects the tax rate and some sample scenarios of what might be cut to give us a beginning of understanding of how hard it's gonna hurt.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jake.
And see, we didn't throw one tomato, did we?
Can I ask how,
See you
what would
Tuesday, right?
happen on Thursday night? Like, who would would it be Jonathan? Would it be, like, how would we
Yeah, that's a
on
great question.
Thursday?
gonna
I just
bring
wanna,
that
I'm just curious
Yeah,
what our
In the
participation would
past,
be.
yeah, the board members who have sort of been part of that, we generally encourage to play a role. You're the elected officials. It'd be nice for you to have a say on Thursday night.
I mean, I'd be happy to
Sometimes the
tell
board-
why I support it, but he so cognizantly
Yeah,
explains it that I'm curious
And
what
I wanted to, this is the kind of thing that I'm proud of that we've done for the last 10+ years, is because we ended up saving the town an enormous amount of money. And we have schools that are presentable and people are coming here, and because people are coming here, we
You get
have
more
more
Yeah.
tuition money and we save the town a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's always been a very good investment.
When we did the Wilder School, Doug, I think it was you and I did the presentation.
Yeah.
I think for this, I mean, I'd be happy to facilitate a meeting, or, I would love it if one of the two of you, Doug or Sarah, who are on the committee, had something to say with Jonathan. He is queued up to do the presentation. I just think the community doesn't know him from a hole in the wall.
Sure.
They know you as the elected official. They know Doug. So it's nice whether you introduce it, play some part in that conversation is my 2 cents. I don't know. Peter's done a few.
Yeah, I've done it. And I'm more than willing to help out or whatever, but
Jonathan does not want to do a PowerPoint. He wants to do sort of similar to what he
Yep.
did tonight, and then respond to questions.
Because I feel like the questions that we get are going to be incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's a toe in the water on how the public's gonna.
right, and quite frankly, the sooner we get this in front of people, the
Yep.
more time they have to absorb it, the
Yep.
more time that.
I think the
the
school,
less chance they're gonna say we were hiding things from them.
Sure. Right.
And, CLA just came out a couple of days ago, or maybe a week now.
yeah,
And this is the first time I knew what the numbers meant in terms of an impact.
the school folks and the staff are very excited about the bond. Because they considered all that before they knew what the CLA would do, but.
Fixes their problems.
Well, I mean, I will definitely be on board with saying, for me, the $500,000 of future planning is the most exciting part about the bond, because it will keep us from having 4 pages of back repairs that have to happen, you
And I
know?
think focusing on the fact that we're trying to be deliberate about what we're spending money on, instead of fixing what's broken, we're thinking about the future as we fix anything that's in need of repair, proactive.
I think it's a very smart approach. I have no problem with that. I'm just saying, we're gonna have to figure out how to sell something that's gonna be very hard to sell given the environment. And I had hoped that our CLA wouldn't come in the way it did.
Is
I
the
find
hope
it-
that, I guess I'm gonna push this question, is the hope that I get the budget down enough that you're comfortable supporting the bond? Or, I just don't know why you don't get behind the bond now, or have that conversation now so we can commit to the bond.
So Coach is missing.
Yeah,
He's an important part of this conversation.
he is.
We need to arrange for him to take part of it.
There he is.
When I
So
get the
maybe be in a position to, but,
I understand,
wanna-
but I just want to push that
Yeah.
forward, because it sounds like you're serious about the bond.
yes, but I still wanna know what the overall numbers is, because I see there's an interaction. And, going to the public with a bond and a budget that don't pass sets us up for nothing good.
Because I honestly, because of all the changes in the funding formula, I can't predict that cutting out the $4 million is gonna bring the budget to a percentage that you were happy with.
We gotta know what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And we don't know what we're looking at. We don't have the,
Do we also need to see what he proposes with a 4 million down, but a 5 million spend? I mean, because that to me is the big trade-off, right? Like we're gonna have, I mean, I did put Jonathan on the spot, but I really do think it's like $7.5 million that would have to be spent in the next 16 months. That
So
isn't
that's a-
budgeted anywhere. You know what I mean?
Right. So that's a huge problem. I mean,
Yeah.
if you forego the bond and you decide to add and you have to add
$7 million to the budget.
Budget, there go, you know, your 35% increase just went to 42 or more.
yeah.
So it's half of one, you know, half dozen of one, six of another sort of thing, or worse.
All right. Welcome, sir.
He was very
Right into the
excited.
middle of everything.
Perfect timing.
Well, I knew what was coming, you know, so.
Yeah.
Oh. It's just, the system's imploding. Yeah, that's the sad part. At the state level, you know, let alone how it's affecting us individually. Now, imagine a dilemma. If your CLA dropped to 106. So imagine what it must have been prior to the 106. Because there's only one district in the state that had 122.5 CLA, and it dropped to 105. So anyways,
Everybody's heard.
it has the same effect because it dropped.
Yeah.
So even though that number is like astounding.
You're still being positive, but relatively you're
You're still
need to
losing
find
money.
more money.
You're losing money.
You're needing to find money you didn't have before.
So that's the problem that, you know, we were talking to the Ways and Means Chair just a little while ago about what can the state do with the yields to adjust that disparity. Because see, we can't really do anything other than counter this kerfuffle that AOE's in with the weights. Because they've sent us 4 different versions of the numbers. Each one of them successively were wrong. Okay, no, actually, inaccurate is a nicer way to put it. And that affected every district in the state. Every business manager is pulling their hair out, you know, and you know, I feel bad for the young ones because they won't have any hair left.
They'll look like me,
You know?
follically challenged.
So I think, you know, we need to be as conscientious as possible around our next steps. But we've been really intentional about protecting our community's investment. And, you know, having that 25-year plan coming into the last 15 years basically put us in a good position. We're not at one of the schools that are saying we need $90 million for his school. Okay, because we didn't do anything.
99 now, right?
Yeah.
So, and you know, it's that inflationary.
Oh, yeah.
spiral. So I was talking with Treasurer Pidgeot. He's putting together a proposal to attempt to come up with approximately $26 billion through a specialized bond for school construction. And that, if he can pull that off, he'd probably be our next governor.
If we were back in the days when the state was paying for the construction of schools, we'd be infinitely better off.
Right.
But
We
the
had to
thing
pay
is,
it ourselves.
but as a new treasurer coming in with that kind of a statement, he's got a lot of, let's say, gravitas behind it, you know, because, hey, he's the one that helped get us through COVID, you know, so, you know, he's coming with a lot of credibility, and even the Republican administration feels strong about it. So, you know, that part might be a perfect storm, you know, to help us, you know, if we continue to just be very careful about how we do ours. So,
Do we have any instinct on what the town is gonna ask and what their budget ask is gonna be? Because I mean, I just, as a homeowner, we also, you know,
Right.
there are two numbers we're looking at right now. And like, are they asking for the bond for the highway stuff that the town need? Like, do we know what else is on the ballot?
The budget was a pretty moderate traditional increase,
Okay.
wasn't huge.
Okay.
If I recall, I did read, I thought it was 3% around.
Okay.
And they are thinking of a bond for a new fire station. But that's it.
Okay.
The bummer this year is that a lot of the numbers that we usually depend on came in really positive for us. You know, the number of students, the weighting turned out in our favor. The spending for per pupil went way down, but the CLA
Blows it all up.
blows it all up. And obviously there's a problem across the whole state with appraisals and.
So I don't want to worry about, I understand it covers the whole state. I understand that. I have deep pity for them. I am in communication with many of them.
You want to solve our problem?
I want to solve our problem.
and the way we do that is the way we've done it
Yes,
consistently. Because we're in a lot better shape than that. Okay, and a lot of that comes down to the fact that this board has worked hard, to try to do the best, you know, that we can for the community, and we need to continue to do that. And then anything else that comes our way is great. You know? So-
Yeah, and I certainly can make some very thoughtful changes to the budget. None of them will be easy or painless, but I'll do what we have to do, and we'll see if we can get it to a number the board's comfortable to support the bond, because I think Sarah's point really resonates with me, where, you know, a project that was X million in July is now $3-4 million more. That's what we've seen. It's outrageous. The best room was like that, you know?
I mean, from
It
12
went
to
in a
15.
year from, an
months.
$800,000 budget to a $1.6 million project. So that $21-22 million is gonna be, you know, probably 30 next year at this time, which is kind of hard to stomach. And we didn't solve the problem that we have, you know, the 360 additional apartments moving in and some number of students.
And the $900,000 that we just released is just a drop in the bucket on the actual, like, putting a lock on the door of the high school,
Yeah.
you know?
Well,
It needed to be spent, where we spent it.
right. And that's what we've done, you know, in the past, and we've tried to leverage those, you know, the small bonds that we've done, you know, over the last, 10 or 12 years to take that bigger piece of strengthening the underneath stuff, so to speak. And that was something that you're talking about on the radio. It's like a lot of the things that need to be done, you won't see,
Mhm.
you know, because they have to be done.
It's boring stuff.
But
Yeah.
if you don't do that, they come back and they're more costly.
Mhm.
Yeah, the state is basically said to us, congratulations, you're wealthier than you thought you were. Too bad that isn't in the form of wealth you can actually spend. And oh, by the way, here's the ticket. You gotta pay because you're not wealthier. Because, you know, it's a little, be careful what you ask for, because.
When we do for reappraisal,
2 years ago,
Now,
I think.
yeah.
that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Very
it is.
Because, if you look around and then you talk to the town side folks, the ones that weren't impacted quite at 20%, like
Have
we
done it
were,
recently.
have had a recent
Yep.
reevaluation. So they took a hit but their
Not-
hit wasn't anywhere near the 20
As I
points.
said, one of our, so that's true and not true. You gotta pay the same amount.
Hmm.
It's just that the tax rate it takes to raise that amount is different because the value that you're looking at against that tax rate is.
I mean,
higher.
part of it would, my house, if my house is 250,000 right now and it goes up to 400 because of this change, then my tax rate's gonna go up. My tax bill
Yes.
is going to go up either way.
Yes.
So if my tax bill goes up by $2,000, I'm just throwing random numbers, and then you tell me there's a 2% increase on that, then I'm gonna pay. If my tax rate doesn't go up, but you tell me there's a 30% increase, I'm still paying the same amount of
Yes.
money,
Yeah,
right? Like,
that's
it's-
irrelevant.
there's a lot of like
Smoke
fake
and-
money.
Smoke and
Well,
mirrors.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
issue is, it's very easy to look at a tax rate and what the increase is and get excited over that. Because it has an immediate visceral impact.
Right.
It's harder to understand, well, once you go through the process, the tax rate went up, but your value of your house went down, or vice versa, and what's that mean in dollars and cents?
Hmm.
And how big that is what really matters in the end, but it's not what gets talked about very often.
Right.
And for better or worse, we're in the environment where what gets talked about is the tax rate. And that's what's going to make it harder or less hard to sell this. Because, and
Most of
so,
But the issue is, you can look at people and say, yes or no. If you say yes, this is what's gonna happen over the next 5 years. If you say no, who's going to empty the buckets of the water because the roofs are leaking? Who's going to be there when they close the door because we didn't meet certain regulations and we can no longer use the school? I mean, to me, it's very simple thinking. And the thing is, we just need to be prepared to go talk to our colleagues in town so they understand why.
So,
And if you do that,
mhm.
I don't believe you'll have a problem.
Well, I would like to agree with you, except that we sometimes get in the position where you say, you don't pay the $2.50, your house is going away. And the guy says, that's great, but I don't have $2.50. And it doesn't matter whether the $2.50 would go to a really good use for $2.50. If you just don't have it, you don't have it. And in many people's minds, they are stretched, so then they don't have it, and they're not gonna be happy no matter what.
And when we look at the additional people that are coming for in the new buildings and stuff, are they gonna have it?
Well, when there are more of them, we have more pockets to reach in and take money out of.
See,
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand
But
that,
it's
but
not, unfortunately, for a couple of years.
is that pocket gonna be empty?
Well, it's
But-
not
but-
the,
But the thing, sometimes it, like, I think we're all getting to that point where numbers are numbers, and regardless of how unique our funding formula is for education in Vermont, the fact still remains, if you grow your community, that's a positive for your community. Hartford is growing, that is a positive. The results don't always show up as quickly, as people might wanna think, but they do affect us in a positive way. I mean, it's like, you look at 1,800 kids. 4 budgets ago, we were at about 13. So in a 5 to 6 year period, we gained 500 kids,
So, yeah.
and that's real.
Well,
Sherry here, well,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna move that microphone.
the fact of the matter is that significant change up or down come with costs.
Yep.
We are fortunate that the costs associated with going up, the consequences of going up are bad, but they're better than the alternative. If we were losing population at the rate we're gaining it, if the housing values were dropping through the roof, that would be much more difficult, but doesn't matter really long to us. We have a problem to resolve.
Of course.
So,
Yeah, our numbers on students and spending actually look very good.
yeah, it's not like
It's
we're
just the
we're getting-
CLA.
Right, we're not frivolous. We're not.
Yeah,
being
it's just the
frivolous. We're not-
CLA. I mean, we
It's-
are at 1,850 kids actual. But
Yeah.
if you look at the equalized students, we're at 2,117. We haven't been that high
Yeah.
since I got here.
It's really nice.
So that's
Yeah,
really
that
nice.
goes back 13
And
years.
that makes our spending per pupil actually lower.
Yeah,
But again, the CLA dropped so much,
it doesn't matter,
doesn't matter.
because we are now turning ourselves into a spending town.
So hopefully, like, and not hopefully, I know what's gonna end up happening. There will be a yield adjustment because we have to. There is no, just no other way to deal with it. And it will be painful for someone in county. But we've had to do it before, we've done it before, and we will do it again. It's not easy, but, just like these discussions we're having here, and, we'll weather the storm.
So,
But I think Doug's point's well taken.
Yeah.
As far as, we have to be upfront and in front of the discussion, the local
And
discussion.
like we had done it before, when
Mhm.
there was another board member who is no longer on our board, but
Mm.
was we were concerned about the budget that year, and he broke it down in such nice, simple language and understanding, so that.
Well, that was the intent.
Yeah,
You know,
and I
we-
think
we-
that's something we should be looking at for this too.
Exactly, then, we're on the same.
Yeah.
page. I mean, and Doug, you're saying this, everybody's saying
Yeah,
the same thing.
exactly.
Is what people understand, they understand. But if you're talking gobbledygook,
Yeah, we gotta.
Right.
Five words,
Mm.
that's it.
Let's make it.
so
may I suggest we move on with the rest of the agenda, because
Yes,
let's do it.
the problem's not gonna get resolved immediately, and we have other stuff to do.
certainly can. Coach, would you like to take over? We're at board committee reports. Are you finished it up?
You can finish.
All right, board committee reports.
You got
Just
it.
Tell them about the-
The tech center
Coach, you know that-
had their open house
You hear about
tonight
it,
from
you
6 to 7, and none of us were there.
Yeah.
I know. And
So that brings another little issue. Tom, can we come up with a calendar that all of the people, I'm gonna say people because there's more than the directors, but whoever schedules meetings in the school district has to go and post it in this calendar so that we don't have conflicts like, well, tonight.
Mhm.
I feel bad that not any
know.
of us were at the tech center.
Yeah.
For the
I know.
open house.
Mm.
And we have other things where we are planning on doing something and all of a sudden.
I do have a calendar. I did create that for you and for them, but now it's getting everyone to use it. So I will
Right.
beat that drum again and get people to use it.
See that, it's really handy to be able to go to one place and see all of your calendars. It's just like getting your own calendars to sync.
You just add it to your Google Calendar.
Yeah.
And saying to every one of your other
Oh,
email
yeah.
addresses, no matter if it's Microsoft or
Yeah,
AOL, talk to the Google
I-
Calendar.
I can hop on that. Yeah,
And then it's
'cause tonight we
57
were
colors
supposed to
like mine is.
actually use that room, but they have open house.
I ran out of color.
Oh, mine's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, me too.
I ran out of. Mary's is red, that's. Anything, everything for Mary is red.
there you go.
So I kind of keep an eye on the red stuff.
Do we have any more committee reports?
I do if we, H. Corey, as they do every year, is working through the roadmap and the priorities for the upcoming year. And engaging more with this board is high on that priority list because the committee has been very focused on the town, the policy, and the public safety review. So the first step is to reach out to Julia to find out how and where we could be helpful to the building coordinators, to Julia as a coordinator, like what, where a group of really enthusiastic volunteers could play a role. What already exists that could be supported by community members. And then just a recommendation to all of you to read Susanna's state report on racial equity. It's just very good. So those are my HCORE updates.
Okay. Deb, do you have anything else on? Do you want to talk about? I don't really have any reports yet. VSBA is kind of running in place. We have some meeting, it seems, every single day now. Peter, do you have anything? And I'm sorry, and Hartford Community Coalition is still doing super job. They've really got lots of things going for the kids in the community, for grandparents who are raising kids in the community, and still going strong. Peter, I'm sorry, now you're.
I have nothing to add.
Coach, you have anything?
I guess everything's going, well, from the finance, perspective. The new system's up and running. They're fine tuning some of the reporting components of it, by design. Some of the reports need to be more streamlined, and that's something that it'll just take a little bit of coordinating, with the contract. Just a quick side note. One of the processes would take one signature. Now it's 6. So, and the thing is, you're still reviewing the same amount of information. It's just because of the way the new system designed the formula, each one has to sign. So,
It's been a huge transition, but on my end, where I approve every requisition, it's really nice because I can do it from anywhere. Whereas the old system, I had to pretty much be in my office. And I can see 100 at a time and go down and see who's asking for what amount of money to be spent on what. And it's really nice.
Good.
It's sort of brought us into the new age, where the other system is very antiquated.
It's knocking on AI.
Yeah.
Which is scary. So.
Do we have anybody online that
We do, but we don't have
comments?
anyone who wants to talk.
Anybody on the board? Anything?
Just Roy was going to send us a note.
He did.
Okay, so you guys had a chance to take a peek at that? Or,
Some of us have looked at it, yes, I printed it off.
if we can take a look and at least agree with, the formatting and, that piece, then McPherson can start working on developing.
Right. And that
So
was what
that's something.
Roy had said too.
Yeah. So if we can do that, that'll keep that process moving.
And are we, as far as replies, if we reply to him individually and give him feedback, is that enough, or do we need to bring this back as a consensus?
At this point, it's kind of editorial,
Okay,
so just send it to him,
okay, great.
okay? Because he'll he'll take our notes.
Yep.
and
Okay.
Bring it together.
Together.
My only question is, and I mentioned this to Tom earlier, is I just want to get kind of an update on the middle school. And we had talked about having a school board meeting in the middle school in our engagement meeting. So that was, I just wanted to bring that back forward now that we're in the new year. Because I'm still here. I mean, people are still asking questions.
So does it make sense? That would be my question to the rest of the board would be, would it make sense for us to do our January engagement meeting at the middle school?
It would be really nice if we could do the first February meeting at the middle school, because you'll see in the next section that I'm gonna nominate for appointment interim principal. And he won't be able to start until February 4th.
Okay.
Okay.
So he's gonna be doing some things ahead of time, but he's still under contract
Right.
in his current district until the end of the second marking period, which was the compromise for getting him out of his contract.
So let's,
So if you could do it, it would be nice.
I would support
What's
that.
the date on that?
What is that February meeting is? Let me see.
Second.
So
would
your
be
meeting will be the 14th, Valentine's Day,
Valentine's Day.
Okay.
if that's all right.
6 p.m.
But I've already told them we'd like a series of informational meetings at the middle school. Whether those are board meetings or just things a couple board members could attend. But we could do that February meeting there. If that's all right.
Peter, did you have something else?
No.
Sarah, anything else?
That was my update on the middle
You
school.
said no. Coach, do you have anything else?
no.
Tom, you?
No.
Okay, this consent agenda. Appointments, resignations and retirement.
Yeah, so really excited, 2 appointments. One is Brian Boardman. Brian was highly recommended for the interim principal position at the middle school from our friends at UVI, which is the Upper Valley Educators Institute. He's a candidate right now in the master's program and the principal prep program. He'll be done with that in June, but so he applied and we've interviewed him. We actually had 7 applicants for the position, 5 of which were qualified and people we were interested in and spoke with. But Brian matched the other administrators and myself the best, his style, his personality, his experience. So we would like to nominate him tonight for appointment as the interim principal for the rest of the year. He's hoping he wows us and we hire him as a permanent, but he'll need to apply. Now that I have that, that under my belt, I'll open the search for the permanent principal, assistant principal. But so that's one. And then we also have Abby Folks, who I met with today. She's going to be a 3rd grade teacher out of Pucci School. We had a resignation there due to a significant others relocation. So Abby Folks.
Cool.
So we're super excited to move forward at the middle school especially.
So in that discussion around, like just staffing. How are we right now? Other than those major leadership positions, how are the support staff and?
I think we're doing better. Not great. We're still struggling to find applicants. We still have some vacancies that other teachers are filling in for. But I would say we're doing slightly better than the fall. We have,
That's just always that general question because.
it's a struggle across the whole state.
Yeah.
Never before 37 years, I've never heard of vacancies in teaching positions throughout the year, never ever. Until the last couple, but this year in particular, we're seeing, people not want to get into teaching. Record numbers of temporary provisional licenses. It's and some of the highest pay increases we've seen for teachers, so it's a real problem. It's a national problem, but
It is.
certainly, like you said, Nancy, I'm mostly concerned about our district, but
Yeah,
something we're all struggling with.
we're not the lone wolf.
Yeah, I have to say, I was shocked at the number of applicants we had for the interim position. The interim middle school position. I thought we'd be really struggling. We did beat the pavement with, inquiries around the whole state, but we still ended up with 7. And we have
That's good.
several interested administrators from the region for the permanent position.
Because of contract issues.
Yeah, they can't really apply right now,
Right.
or that would be a real battle to get an administrator out of a contract mid-year. Teachers is generally seen as advancement, so that's a reason to be released. I know it is in our contract. So.
Cool.
Good question.
And no resignations.
No resignations.
I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Our thankful welcoming to the new members of the.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
We do have that little need for
Yeah.
an executive session, quick
So
personnel matter.
yes,
the next board meeting is not 124.
No.
It is now 116. And we want to do the meeting evaluation now, get it out of the way, or do you want to do it after we come back from the executive session?
I'd say, why don't we do it before, and then, we can just leave executive session.
Be done.
yeah,
You know.
be done.
And if there's any action that needs to be taken, we can determine that at the end.
Somebody want to do it, or do you want me to do it? All right, board meeting monitoring report. The board was prepared for the meeting, satisfactory. The board's time was spent on eds, not means, satisfactory. Each board member was given the opportunity to participate, satisfactory. Board treated all persons with courtesy and fairness, satisfactory. Board adhered to Robert's rules of order to the extent we needed to. Board adhered to the adopted governance style and that it emphasized outward vision, it encouraged diversity in viewpoints, it exercised strategic leadership, not administrative detail, it maintained distinction between board and staff roles, it used collective decision-making, it looked to the future, satisfactory. All right, I would like to move that we find that there is a need for a executive session to discuss the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during the open meeting pursuant to 313A3, and that we go into said executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry for being slightly distracted. I was trying to find the relevant.
Those numbers, yeah.
Yeah,